Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 18. Today's text is text number, hopefully, 23. There's no purport there. 24, there's no purport. And then 25, there's 7 line of purport. No, 2 line of purport. Nevertheless, so I'll just read 23, 24, and then we can do the word for word on verse 25. So, text 23. Sri Sukha Vacha Hata Putra Tithi Sakra Varsni Grahena Visnuna Manyuna Soka Diptena Dvalanti Parya Chintayat. Translation. Straightforward. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, just to help Indra, Lord Vishnu killed the 2 brothers, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Because of their being killed, their mother Diti, overwhelmed with lamentation and anger, contemplated as follows. Text 24. Kadanu Rashtir Hantaram Indriyaranam Ulbanam Aklina Hirdayam Papam Gatayitva Saye Sukham. Translation. Lord Indra, who is very much fond of sense gratification, has killed the 2 brothers Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu by means of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, Indra is cruel, hard-hearted, and sinful. When will I, having killed him, rest with a pacified mind? Text 25. Okay, let's try and repeat line by line. Krimi vid bhasma samgnasid Yas yasa bihi tasya cha bhuta druk tat krite swartam kim veda naya nirayo yataha krimi vid bhasma samjagnasid yas yasa bihi tasya cha bhuta druk tat krite Svartam kim veda narayo yataha krimi vid bhasma samgnasit yas yasa bihi tasya cha bhuta druk tat krite svartam kim veda narayo yataha. Okay, please try. Krimi vid bhasma samgnasit yas yasa bihi tasya cha bhuta drukta krite svartam kim veda narayo yataha. Krimi vid bhasma samgnasit yas yasa bihi tasya cha bhuta drukta krite svartam kim veda nirayo yataha. Anyone else?
Krimi vid bhasma samgyasid
Kim vid bhasma samgnasit
yasyesha vihitasya cha
yas yasa bihi tasya cha
bhuta druktat krute swartam
bhuta drukta svartam
kim veda nirayo yataha.
kim veda narayo yataha. Anyone else? Krimi worms wheat stew bhasma ashes sagna name acid becomes yasya of which body isa bihitasya although designated as king cha also bhutadruk he who harms others takrita for the sake of that sva-artham his self-interest kim veda does he know niraya punishment in hell yata from which translation by Srila Prabhupada. How to do this? Should I just tolerate? Maybe I can just relocate slightly. No, it's fine because then it'll get stuffy and then everybody's gonna fall asleep, including me. Okay. Sorry about the interjection there, but this fan is on top of my mind. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. When dead, the bodies of all the rulers, known as kings and great leaders, will be transformed into worms stool or ashes. If one enviously kills others for the protection of such a body, does he actually know the true interest of life? Certainly he does not. For if one is envious of other entities, he surely goes to hell. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The material body, even if possessed by a great king, is ultimately transformed into stool, worms, or ashes. When one is too attached to the bodily conception of life, he is certainly not very intelligent. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumitham Yana Tasmai Shri Guruve Panchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhureva Cha Patitanama Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasti Gaur Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we see again some nice instructive verses in the Bhagavatam. Of course, Sukadeva Goswami, he was appreciating these, very nice questions being asked. And we see we're at the point where DT is, of course, very, very much upset about the death of her two sons, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. So she's pointing out a few things that, of course, Lord Indra, we've been reading, the last many chapters. I think even in the previous canto, Lord Indra somehow has this tendency to get into trouble, even though he's, the king of heaven in one sense. He always seems to get himself into trouble one way or the other. And so, rightly so, of course, he's in the heavenly planets. He is someone, of course, very, very empowered, you know, although in the material realm, he is a very, very big controller. So it's being pointed out here that he is very fond of sense gratification. And in this case, he's being accused of killing, or I guess Lord Vishnu aiding him in killing Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu. So then the next verse is pointing out when dead the bodies of all the rulers known as kings and great leaders. So even great people like uh, Lord Indra, Lord Brahma, all these great personalities, as much as, they're very, very powerful controllers in the universe, still they're all subject to birth, death, and in this way, this cycle of birth and death continues. That even, Lord Brahma himself, even though he is, such a powerful ruler, creator, you know, of so many powerful entities as well, still he is subject to his life coming to an end. So this verse is pointing out that no matter what a great leader you are, what a big king you are, still, at the end of your life, what happens? Either you're going to be buried in the ground, and what's going to happen? Once your body is in the ground, the soul has left. So, just the material body starts to rot, and then the worms come and eat you up. Otherwise, the other alternative is cremation, and of course, your body just becomes ashes. So the idea is, these verses are pointing to that when one is very much attached to the body, then, all these trials and tribulations of material life continue. So we see in this case, Aditi is an angry mother. Uh, you know, she's very upset that her two sons were killed. And in one sense, she wants revenge. And so she is, we'll hear later on how she, very cleverly uh, tries to get her husband, Kasyapa Muni, to give her a benediction. She serves him very, very nicely, pleases him very, very nicely. And in this way, she, knows, his mind, in one sense, that once my husband is very, very pleased, he will grant me anything that I want. And so we see, it's a classic example in our, day-to-day lives, that when, a man and woman decide to get married and, start a family, that, the women are generally very, very powerful. Of course, they're taking care of the family situation, but still they're very, very dutiful in their duty of taking care of the home and raising the family. And so in this way, we see that DT was very, very smart in that sense, that she knew how to please her husband. But of course, she was trying to figure out uh, how best to kill Indra. That was the goal, how to kill Indra. And so she made a plan where she would please her husband and she will naturally, it's very, very natural to grant some benediction. So this idea of lamentation, she was lamenting for her two sons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Of course, we understood prior during the birth of, or how did the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu came about. So again, same thing, DT was very much agitated and wanted Kasyapa Muni to please her. And so at an inappropriate time, we remember from that past time, at an inappropriate time, she had made a request to Kasyapa that she wanted to enjoy sex life. And then very inappropriately, of course, at an inappropriate time when Kasyapa Muni had done that, that resulted in the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So of course we know the past time, how powerful these demons were and how they were terrorizing, the planet at the time. And so of course we'll find that Kasyapa Muni, in the coming verses, how he will be lamenting, that this is the second time, I felt prey to my senses. Uh, and, was not able to control. So we can see that we're, dealing with not just ordinary personalities, uh, like, you and I, in one sense, but still, these are very, very powerful, empowered personalities, that could do extraordinary things, as, we'll find out in these verses. Kasyapa Muni, of course, very, very powerful entity. And we find in the previous chapters how Aditi had even given birth to the Supreme Lord as Vamanadev. So, we're dealing not with just ordinary personalities here, but very powerful personalities. So, in this particular verse here, where it's mentioned, if one enviously kills others for the protection of such a body, does he actually know the true interest of life? Certainly not. Certainly he does not. For if one is envious of others, he surely goes to hell. So in this case, of course, she is trying to uh, point out that, if one is just enviously killing others for the protection of your material body, then, what is the use? What are you trying to do? And so we see that in this case, this is in direct contrast to the situation that Arjuna found himself. Arjuna also found himself on the battlefield, and he had to face hundreds and thousands, millions and millions of entities, and of course he was also killing. So what's the difference in this case? DT is pointing out that if one enviously kills others, he's going to go to hell. But in the case of Arjuna, we see that he was also killing. But why was he killing? He was killing for the pleasure of Krishna, because Krishna wanted him uh, to fight the battle. Of course, being a Kshatriya, it was his duty to fight. So in that case, he was in one sense protecting. But in this case, if one just enviously kills, one goes to hell. What else did we have? So other examples in similar fashion of, how one fell for his, sense gratification, own sense gratification. I was remembering the example of Dasharath, and, how Dasharath, of course, he had given his wife some boons. What was her name? Kartikeya. Kartikeya. Was that her name? Dasharath's wife? Ram's stepmother? Anyone? So I was remembering the pastime of, how he had given some boon, and of course, at an appropriate time when, Lord Ram was to be crowned king of Ayodhya. At the time, she had made a request to the king that, I have some boons that you have promised me. And of course, she made a request based on those boons that she had, that Ram would be banished and would be exiled into the forest for 14 years. Uh, so this attachment to the body, of course, we understand is what is causing, uh, our life in this material world, this samsara, this continuous repeated birth and death. Uh, and so we are so much attached to the body that, even though sometimes we may, read, hear, still, on a regular basis, the false ego, which seems to be the root cause, is constantly, agitating us, constantly trying to bewilder us that, we are not these bodies. Uh, we are actually spirit soul. But we understand that this false ego is the actual real knot in the heart that is constantly competing for space on the throne of our heart. We understand that the rightful throne of our heart belongs to Super Soul, belongs to Krishna, but still this competition is constantly going on by the false ego, this hard knot that's constantly competing to sit on this throne. So we have to figure out how to overcome this ahankara, this false ego. And of course, by studying the scriptures, by constantly hearing uh, from advanced devotees, constantly uh, hearing in these Bhagavatam classes, whenever there's opportunities to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, then in this way, gradually, we can make some spiritual advancement. And ultimately, the scriptures mention, Bhagavatam mentions, that how to cut this knot. Ultimately, only Krishna can. And how can Krishna do it? Of course, Krishna is not going to appear for most of us. But in one sense, we're very, very fortunate that we had Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descend as none other than Krishna himself. And he gave this chanting of the holy name. So we understand that the holy names of Krishna, by chanting this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, that this is Krishna himself who has, invested uh, his name, form, qualities, everything, so that by hearing this Maha Mantra, we can actually see Krishna. So we understand this concept that, even though we say sometimes seeing is believing, we know that, there's so many instances where we don't understand the full picture. But we need to become convinced of how we can actually see Krishna by hearing his holy names. And by gradual chanting, one will make spiritual advancement. By the association of senior devotees, one can make spiritual advancement and gradually be released from these shackles of the false ego, thinking that I am this body and, becoming attached. So what do we know about attachment and lust And of course, anger, we see in this case, DT is very, very angry. But how did it result? Of course, she was attached to the body of her sons. And so from Bhagavad Gita 262, we understand there's more details given about how this process works. 262, 263. These verses give us more insights on uh, this idea of what happens to lust, anger, greed. So 262, Dhyayato Visayan Pumsa Sangas Tesupa Jayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodho Abhijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, the person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. So I'll quickly just read this purport Prabhupada gave. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. And the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by, by the incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above mentioned verse, Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord, shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail. For the slightest thought, sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. So we can see in a nutshell, this verse is very, very instructive, saying that if we are not Krishna conscious, Maya is, of course, always there waiting for the moment when we are not Krishna conscious. And we see that Prabhupada is giving these examples here, of these great personalities, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, so many of them who felt prey to sense pleasure. Of course, like I said previously, these are just empowered personalities, We shouldn't, in one sense, compare ourselves to them, but still the principle is there that they were bewildered by being attached to the material body. They fell for sense gratification, material sense gratification, uh, and did not choose Krishna consciousness. So we see there was, I was thinking of two other examples. Uh, who was it that eating in the water for thousands of years and then he saw two fish mating and ultimately broke his meditation, just that act of seeing these fish. Then I was thinking also of Ajmil, and of course Ajmil also fell prey to his senses, even though he came from a Brahmin family, had so much of education, Brahminical training. Still, one time when he saw the prostitute embracing a man, that very sight, agitated him to the point where he wanted to live with the prostitute, which is eventually what he did, started to live with the prostitute, started to have children. But of course, we know the story of Ajmil, how by calling out the name of Narayan, he was also saved. So please, devotees, don't think that you're going to fall in this category of Ajmil. We don't have the karma Ajmil had. And so by just trying to engage in sinful activities, hoping that at the time of death, we are going to be saved by calling out the name of Krishna, this is not an intelligent plan at all. So the idea is that artificial repression, of the senses will not help one. So Prabhupada is also mentioning in this particular verse that it is only by being engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, by doing devotional service, that one will be able to positively engage the mind. Otherwise, we just keep chasing material things. Then again, verse 263 gives us a little bit more information about how this process of anger works. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So this is a constant cycle that we as living entities see ourselves in. We are trying, of course, to chant Hare Krishna, but still there's so much of agitations uh, in the environment, um, embedded in our heart. There's so much of anarthas. So gradually we want to chant this Maha Mantra and purify ourselves, get rid of all of these uh, unwanted desires sitting in the heart. And like we said in previous classes, we want our hearts to become soft like butter so that Krishna can come and steal it. So, in this way, we need to really engage ourselves in the service of the Lord uh, so that we can become fully Krishna conscious in this very life by Prabhupada's mercy. At the end of this life, we have the benediction that we can go back home, back to Godhead. We don't have to take another birth, but ultimately it depends on our consciousness. So, verse 64 gives us a little bit more information, but a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain complete mercy of the Lord. So Prabhupada in the purport is mentioning, let me quickly read this. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. So the idea is we need to learn how to become very expert in not pleasing our senses. We want to please the senses of Krishna. We want to learn how to please the senses of Krishna. And in this way, we can overcome this Maya, this material attractions. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. So then, of course, there's some discussion in Bhagavad Gita. In the 16th chapter, the Divine and Demoniac, text 21 gives us a little bit more information about this anger, lust, and greed again. And the translation of that verse is, there are three gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. So I think Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he made a nice acronym: lust, anger, and greed. LAG, Lag. And so the idea is that every sane man should give up these, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So Of course, lag means delay. So he was using the analogy saying that lust, anger, and greed will delay the spirit soul from advancing in Krishna consciousness. It will lag. And so don't engage in these activities. Don't get caught up, with lust, anger, and greed. And so Prabhupada in the purport is mentioning the beginning of demoniac life is described herein. One tries to satisfy his lust. So, when one is attached to the body, and when he cannot, anger and greed arise. The sane man does not want to glide down to the species of demoniac life. Must try to give up these three species, must try to give up these three enemies which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement. And so then in 1622, at least there's some hope. The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. So there is some hope. So the idea is give up attachment to the body and start to, if you want to contemplate something, start to contemplate who am I? What is my purpose? And in this way, start to take one's spiritual life very, very seriously and start to gradually cleanse our heart so that we can go back home to Godhead in this very lifetime. Uh, yeah, I think that's all I had on these verses. Would have been nice if we included the next verse in today's class, but let's leave tomorrow's verse for tomorrow. Lots of nice realizations there. So anybody has any thoughts and realizations of how to give up this attachment to the body? Please share.
Answers to that.
Sure. Anything.
I like describe like compare with the false ego being on the I've heard that before.
Mm,
Ideally, the self worship with me myself set
right.
was very vivid.
Right. Example. Yes, this competition is going on. Uh, who's going to sit in the throne of the heart? This false ego or Krishna? Thank you for sharing that. Please, one.
You were single. Protect one's body by killing another because of unbelief. Since you change to that. So envy also has to be a part of it. So I'm feeling like in terms of like war policy, but then also in terms of maybe like self-defense where maybe there might be a little bit of envy just because of hearts containing
Right.
many years of attachment to you.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So my question was in terms of the where a situation which you realize someone feels that they have to kill seven little entity in order to protect their body. Whether there automatically some kind of envy still in your heart because right now I'm like, oh, this person's an enemy and you're thinking, I don't know anything about my body, so isn't that this now? Or maybe it's envy kind of does. Does that make sense?
Yeah, almost. I can't quite understand the question, but of course, yes, all of us are definitely very, very envious. And it's coming from this false ego that, I am the Lord and Master. This is, all of our situations that, We want to be the Lord and Master, and this is why we're all in the material world in one sense. We were envious of Krishna. And because of that envy, because we wanted, Krishna was getting all the worship, Krishna was getting all the, uh, focus, that, we as living entities, even though we're part and parcel of Krishna, we had become envious. And because of this envy, we have now undergoing this material experience. And so, yes, this envy definitely because of, lifetimes and lifetimes of conditioning, it's in one sense very embedded in our heart. And, it of course manifests itself in different ways. And, it can just be that someone is a better cook, someone is a better this, someone is a better that. But we're constantly being envious, of someone else. And again, trying to uh, also bring someone down, and if not bring someone down, uh, then we want to be better than them. But I'm trying to understand what is the real question regarding envy.
Would that still allow them to
Okay.
go, because I'm thinking, gosh, they shoot about it all my
Right. Okay, get it. So wise question is that if one is envious of someone else and the other person is, trying to protect themselves, uh, then how does, envy play in the mix of things there? So ultimately it depends, are we dealing with devotees? Are we dealing with, persons who are Krishna conscious? So we see that, of course, the classic example is of Arjuna, that, in one sense, uh, Duryodhana, uh, took the kingdom. They took the kingdom and didn't want the Pandavas to, rule. This was their rightful situation, that, they were rulers. So even though they had asked, I guess Krishna was involved in trying to mediate the situation, even though they had made a request, even give them, just one village, very, very small village, so that they can rule because they're Kshatriya by nature. Still, uh, they were denied that opportunity. And so, because they were denied, then, this entire big war had to take place. So, again, someone can argue that, Arjuna, why was he fighting? Is it because of envy? That, he wanted some place to rule. But we see that, that was not the case in that situation. In that situation, there wasn't any tinge of envy, that, he wasn't trying to kill so many millions of persons on the battlefield. Uh, but he was trying to defend. And of course, it was religious principles that he was trying to protect. But at the same time, they were Kshatriyas by nature, and he was doing his duty. So that was the message that Krishna was trying to convey to him. That because Arjuna's initial thoughts, in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, his thoughts was, why should I engage in this war? Let the forest and meditate. I don't need a kingdom. I don't want a kingdom. He was, willing to renounce everything and just go to the forest and meditate. Still, Krishna was making the point that no, you're a Kshatriya. If you're a Brahmana, okay, go to the forest and meditate for that matter. But you're a Kshatriya by nature. And because this is your nature, you have to fight. So even though he didn't want to fight, uh, he had to fight. And we know, the result of that. So I don't know if we got to the essence of your question. It is very tricky. In one sense, you can say that it's all about consciousness, where our consciousness is. You know, am I doing it, for my own sense gratification ultimately? And if you can find that thread, even though it may be very slight, very dint, if that thread is there, it's definitely there. And, if someone is unsure, I think we can ask, other senior devotees, you know, is this an envious situation that I find myself in or not? and gradually, can root out these instances of envy. Okay, anyone else has comments and questions? Thank you. Nice question. Kaikeyi, yes, Kartikeya. What was I saying? Kartikeya. It was Kaikeyi who received the boon from King Dhritarashtra. Thank you, Tarak. And then it was Surabi Muni who fell down whilst he was in the water. Yes.
Ooh, thank you for your class. I was wondering, I like the LAG acronym.
Yeah, I liked it too.
Fully, yeah, it's a nice acronym. And I was just wondering, we were just mentioning envy, and I was wondering why envy is one of the three gates. Why is it lust, anger, and greed? Where's envy in that mix?
Where is envy? Why is it lust, anger, and greed, and not envy? So I need a scholar to find the definition of envy and explain why lust, anger, and greed. Uh, what is the sitting places of lust? Okay, dear scholars, where's all the scholars in town? Lust, anger, and greed, these are our enemies. And how does envy?
I'm not a scholar, but I'm just speculating that if you didn't have lust, anger, and greed, then you wouldn't be envious of anyone.
Okay. Um, that's a good thought.
Well, I've heard before that envy is like the roots of it all, and so maybe lust, anger, and greed are the things that feed it.
Yes. I'm just looking. There is a verse, I think, related to all of these things. Okay, anyone else has any? Okay. Yeah. So I think, but sorry, Narottam Das Thakur, he sings about the 6 enemies of the mind: lust, anger, greed, illusion, pride, and envy. So these are the main enemies of the mind. Do anyone has any comments on that? Yeah, I mean, Bhagavad Gita is just mentioning these 3 gates that go to hell. But in terms of the gradual process, I think Bhagavad Gita mentions, let's go there, the characteristics of lust. So Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, there is some descriptions of lust. It is born of the mode of passion. It changes into wrath, which actually is born of the mode of ignorance, and it forces us to act sinfully. the all devouring greatest enemy of the living entity is actually lust. And lust is like fire, it can never be satisfied. So, what is the sitting places of lust? The senses, mind, and intelligence, and it thereby covers knowledge and self-realization. So, this envy, like we said, it is what brought us here to the material world. We were envious of Krishna, that why is he receiving all of this fame, worship, attention, and of course, because we are part and parcel, here's the same thing. Vaishnav, you want to repeat your question?
Shastakrit.
Yeah, he has the answers.
Shastakrit, we're just reading 1621. It talks about three gates of hell, lust, anger, and greed. And I was just wondering how like envy plays into that mix. Why is it not explicitly mentioned?
Why is envy included in that verse?
So the three gates are lust.
Anger and greed. Yeah.
I guess this letter didn't bear some. You have to be, in a sense, you have to be an envious person because it's given to us the reading and just this.
And like I was saying, it's this envy of others that, brought us here to the material world ultimately. Because we were envious of Krishna, we wanted to be the enjoyers. In this way, we have come to the material world. Okay, if there's no further questions, devotees, thoughts on this matter? Then we can stop. Yes.
Like that as well. It's not like you're always pondering.
Yes, that's the point. So the point is, we don't want to become like the voidists and think of nothing, because we are, we are spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. We cannot just keep meditating, thinking of the void. We have to act. And so because we have to act, we have to, contemplate something, rather contemplate spiritual thing. And, there's just so much to contemplating, or even if at the basic level, we want to contemplate, who am I? What is my purpose? Contemplate like that rather than contemplating the objects of the senses, because that's definitely going to get us into more and more trouble.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Kumari.
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to share a little something from that Canto 5, Chapter 5 text. Text 6 to 16 in regards to envy.
Yes, please.
It's in a lecture that Prabhupada gave, and towards the end of it, he's explaining that due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. So it's due to ignorance.
Thank you. So, of course, Bhagavad Gita gives us the method, third chapter, verses 40 to 43. The details are given how to fight lust. And one we learn from these verses is that by regulating the senses, because, of course, we know the mind is very impetuous, difficult to control. One has to begin by regulating the senses. And how to regulate the senses? By devotional service. And also, if we do it under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, we need to engage the soul in Krishna consciousness. And in this way, gradually the mind can be trained by gradual practice of Krishna consciousness. One's intelligence becomes strengthened, and the mind is engaged in devotional service. And if there's no Krishna consciousness, of course, the senses drag the mind drags the intelligence, and the intelligence drags the soul into sense gratification. So let's not do that. Let's become Krishna conscious. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Radha Damodar, Shri Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jaya Radha Damodara Jaya Krishna Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Jaya Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Krishna Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Jaya
Shri Guru Chara
Bhagavad just Dinam.
Gayon, wait, Gayon, Shota Sri Srimad, AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and that's what he writes over in the key. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Se Kamala Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Vita Gadadhar Sri Sarigor Bhaktivedanta. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Muna Maya Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Nantakoti Vaishnava Ki. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki. Gita Gora Premanandi. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Shiva Guru and Shiva Guru. All glories to Shiva Prabhupada.